And we'll now go on into the calming the storm. Jesus calms a storm. Now on that day when evening had come, he said to them, now remember that Jesus had been over on the west side of the Sea of Galilee. And so he was over on this side. He was there somewhere around Capernaum in this area. And so he is now going to be getting into the boat, and they're going to be going across. On that day, when evening had come, he said to them, let us go across to the other side. And leaving the crowd, they took with them in the boat just as he was. And other boats were with him. So there were other boats that were following. And a great windstorm arose, and the waves were breaking into the boat so that the boat was already filling. But he was in the stern, asleep on the cushion. And they woke him and said to him, Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing? And he awoke and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, Peace, be still. And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. And he said to them, Why are you so afraid? Have you still no faith? And they were filled with great fear and said to one another, Who then is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him? Okay, the Sea of Galilee is not the first time that I saw it. I was expecting to see something about the size of Mille Lacs or something like that, but you can easily see across the Sea of Galilee. It's only about 7 miles wide, about 13 miles long. You can't see across it lengthwise, but you can see across it the widthways. Talks about the wind that came up. The Sea of Galilee is 700 feet below sea level. And so you have Mount Hermon, and I don't see Mount Hermon on this map, but you have Mount Hermon, which is almost 10,000 feet high. And so, come on. Why doesn't that want to? Okay. Okay, all right. Okay, so you here see the Sea of Galilee is over here to your right. Mount Hermon is way up over there. Okay, Mount Hermon is about 10,000 feet high. Sea of Galilee is 700 feet below sea level. This is the village of Magdala, which is very close to 700 feet below sea level. And so you have the winds which come on down this path like this that come down very suddenly. And they can form by the heat on the mountain. You get the mountain being heated up, and what you're going to have then is that you're going to have rising air going on up. Other air comes in to fill this in, comes in very rapidly, and so you end up with these very tumultuous seas. We also see that, oops, that wasn't the one there. Okay, this is the one that I want, and this picture was taken from the same spot where I took the picture of Magdala, and here you have this Horns of Hattim. This is where the caravans would go on down. They'd come down through Capernaum, make a hard right turn and go through here, head on west, and then down the Via Maris, the way by the sea. Well, this again is a funnel, and so you had the winds coming off of the Mediterranean Sea that come on down here, and they would funnel on in, and so you'd have these tremendous funnel effect of the wind. I happened to be in the parking ramp at the library yesterday, and it was not windy outside, but because of the uneven temperatures and so on, the sunlight, there was a real gust of wind that was coming on through, and the tunneling of the wind coming through the parking ramp. Well, that's the effect that we have here with this. And so the storms would come up on the Sea of Galilee. This was very common. and they had to be careful about this. Okay, so now, forget Jesus is the creator, and that he created the wind and the sea and the mountains and all of these things. What is a little bit unusual about this picture of these people in this boat going across the sea of Galilee? What is just a little bit odd about this? Now, who was running the boat? Who was on the motor? Who were these individuals? Yes, John. Okay, they didn't know who they were with, but who were they? Who were the people the majority of the people in the boat? Okay, they were fishermen. Though we don't know if they were all fishermen. We don't know about Judas Iscariot and so on, but we know that Philip and Andrew, James and John, they were fishermen. And so they had doubtless been on the Sea of Galilee with these kinds of waves many times before. And now I've been on the ocean, on lakes and so on with a boat, maybe some days that I should not have been there, and trying to battle the waves, so on. And Dan and John and I are talking about this, planning about a month from now, we'll be planning a fishing trip and going on up across these waves again. But other than the fact that he was the Christ, the Creator, what had been Jesus' occupation until this time? He was a carpenter, a builder. So here you have the fishermen who have probably been out on these windy waters many times before. They're asking a carpenter, how do we get out of this mess? Or can't you do something for us here? And they actually forgot. In verse 36, it says, "Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?" And on verse 35, Jesus had said to them, "Let us go across to the other side." So Jesus was totally confident that this was a safe trip, that they were going to go across, and they did not have the faith that in him. So we see that Jesus was weary. When we talk about the fact that Jesus was fully God, he was fully man, here he is showing some of his fully man characteristics, and that he had been preaching and teaching to all of these people, these crowds of people over around Capernaum, and so he was very tired. And so they decided that they were going to go, and as they went the other side, all right, they went over to the other side, someplace in here, they don't know just exactly where, but he was reasonably confident that they were not going to run into large crowds of people over there. And we'll be talking about that in more detail in just a little bit. But the thing about it is that as he woke and he rebuked the wind, the sea became calm immediately. Now, this is not normal. If you've been out on a lake when you've got the wind and the waves and the wind goes down, especially on a fairly large bit of water, we're not talking Lake Zumbro now, but a fairly large piece of water, the waves will keep coming for quite some time afterwards. I was out in the fishing boat off the coast of Peru, and it was, the boat was probably 20, 22 feet long, so on. Anyway, the wind was calm there, but there had been a storm a couple of days earlier over close to Japan. And these waves were now coming across, and so you had these huge waves. They were just swells, and when you'd be up on top of the wave, you could see all of these fishing boats around you. And then when you go down into the bottom of the wave, you couldn't see anything but water, 360 degrees of water around you. And you just wait till you got back up on top of the wave again so you could see that there was somebody else out there. Well, that's the type of thing that happens normally. That wasn't normal here. Jesus calmed the seas, and I just imagine of them as becoming absolutely flat. Any comments or questions on the excursion going across the Sea of Galilee with the wind? Now, Jesus must have really been tired. Why do I say that? He was sleeping. He was sleeping in this storm. And this was not an ocean liner that was balanced and so on. You know, if you're going on a cruise, and you don't get too much action from the waves. But this boat had to be bobbing up and down. I've seen a model. There's one of the museums around the lake, Sea of Galilee, that excavated a boat that had been found, now it's probably been 15 years ago, but the Sea of Galilee got very low, and it actually exposed some of the boats and docks and so on from years past. And this is not a very big boat, and this is the model of what they would have been using, and especially to have 13 men in this boat, it must have been rather treacherous. Okay, we'll continue on then into chapter 5. Okay, so we are now on the other side of the sea. We are in this area, someplace here around by Gergesa. It's rather difficult to pinpoint just exactly where this is. There are many of these places that we've got a pretty good idea where they are, because one of the reasons is that they're having problems finding, and it talks about the pigs going across over a cliff and into the Sea of Galilee. Well, there really aren't any cliffs that they can identify in this area. So they don't know just exactly where this would have been. But then they came to the other side of the sea, to the country of the Gerasenes, and when Jesus had stepped out of the boat, immediately there met him out of the tombs a man with an unclean spirit. He lived among the tombs, and no one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain. Now in Matthew chapter 8, verse 28, it talks about two men being there in the tombs. And so we don't know whether Mark just ignored the one man or whether one man was much more dominant as far as his demonic activity was concerned. We don't know just exactly how this fits in, but the stories other than that match quite closely. For he had often been bound with shackles and chains, but he wrenched the chains apart, and he broke the shackles in pieces. No one had the strength to subdue him. Night and day among the tombs and on the mountains, he was always crying out and cutting himself with stones. And when he saw Jesus from afar, he ran and fell down before him. And crying out with a loud voice, he said, "What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I adjure you by God, do not torment me." For he was saying to him, "Come out of the man, you unclean spirit." And Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" He replied, "My name is Legion, for we are many." And he begged him earnestly not to send them out of the country. Now a great herd of pigs was feeding there on the hillside, and they begged him, saying, "Send us to the pigs, let us enter them." So he gave them permission, and the unclean spirits came out and entered the pigs, and the herd, numbering about 2,000, rushed down the steep bank into the sea and drowned in the sea. Now the herdsmen fled and told it in the city and in the country, and people came to see what it was that had happened. And they came to Jesus and saw the demon-possessed man, the one who had the legion, sitting there clothed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. So there are several things about this story that are a little bit unusual. One is the fact of the pigs. Why would there be pigs here? What country are we talking about? Israel. What people, this is like we went to India. My wife grew up in India, and so we went to visit, and we stopped at a McDonald's. And what was the first thing she ordered? A hamburger. They don't serve hamburgers in India. You can get fish burgers, but no hamburgers because they don't kill cows to eat. Okay, the Jews were commanded not to eat pork. I took a summer field trip through the Black Hills. I went to school in the Black Hills for a summer. There was a group of 30 of us. We were all teachers. And for the last week of this, while we would go throughout the day, we'd have classes in the morning, labs in the afternoon. Every Friday, we spent driving around the hills, Black Hills, exploring the things that we had been learning. The last week or week and a half, we then traveled from the Black Hills through Yellowstone National Park, Grand Teton, the Wind River Range, and so on, and we saw the things on a little larger scale than what we had been studying in the classroom. We stayed in motels during this time. We would eat in restaurants, and most of the towns that we stayed in were fairly small towns. We had one Jewish gentleman in the class, and the professor asked one day, he said, where does, I forget his name now, he says, where does he eat? Does he eat with any of the rest of you? We usually be 4 or 5, 6 of us together would go to cafes because they couldn't handle all 30 of us in one cafe. And we said, no, nobody knew exactly what happened to this guy. He said, well, I'm going to find out. So the next morning for breakfast, he trailed him and walked into the restaurant and found out he had ordered a great big plate full of bacon. And he didn't want anybody else to know that he was eating bacon as a Jew. But anyway, so we have the pigs. So why are we having pigs here in a Jewish country? Pardon? They didn't eat them? All right. So did they grow them for pets? Okay, this area here is you've heard me talk about the Decapolis. This whole area in here was the Decapolis. The Decapolis was primarily Gentile. And either these were Gentile hog raisers, or they could have been Jewish individuals who were raising the hogs for the Gentiles. And so I have heard sermons about the tremendous sin that was going on by the Jews having these hogs there, but it was probably just the fact that the Gentiles were using them, and so they had 2,000 pigs. That's a pretty good sized hog operation. So anyway, they had these. Now it talks about my name is, okay, the first thing is that when Jesus came on the shore, he was immediately recognized. Why would Jesus have been recognized by this individual who was in these tombs who was basically insane, not able to be controlled. Yes, Flora. Okay, she asked the question, didn't the demons know God and Jesus? Yes, the demons would have known. And if the individual did not know, the demons would have known, but the demons were also vocal. They were also able to speak, and they conversed with Jesus. And so the demons knew that who this was, what Jesus could do to them. And so we see this. Now, a legion is actually a number of, a legion was a Roman group of soldiers, 6,000 soldiers. Now they were divided up. A centurion had charge of 100 soldiers. And then there were so many groups of these 100 soldiers that made up another unit. And so a legion of soldiers would be 6,000. And so this demon says that we are legions. Now, it's possible that he's not necessarily saying that we are 6,000 of us, but there were at least many, many, many demons that were inhabiting this individual and had taken over this individual's life, making his life very miserable. So then we see that they asked to be put into, the demons asked to be put into the pigs, and I'm not sure, and I don't know if it makes any difference to us, why they wanted to go into pigs rather than just be allowed to go free. We have a question at the back.
One person observed that the reason for asking was that demons need permission to enter something.
Okay. All right. So they needed permission to be able to enter this. I had one commentary that said that if the demons were just allowed to go free, that they would immediately be cast into the abyss, and they didn't want that. And so this is eventually where they're going to go with Satan into the bottomless pit, and so they'll eventually go there, but that they would have gone there immediately, and so if they got into a body, they would not go there at all. You can research that a little bit more on your own. So we see another thing, that they came out and the herdsmen fled and told it in the city, and they came to Jesus and saw the demon-possessed man who was now, again, he was immediately healed of this. This is one of the nice things about Jesus' healing, and that this is immediate. That's not always the case. I had a hip replaced almost 2 years ago, and that still hasn't healed totally. And so the doctor definitely isn't on the same plane as what Jesus was with his healing. So anyway, we see this, that the man was immediately healed and was able to function and to converse with Jesus. And it says, and they were afraid. And those who had seen it described to them that had happened to the demon-possessed man and to the pigs, and they began to beg Jesus to depart from their region. As he was getting into the boat, the man who had been possessed with demons begged him that he might be with him. Okay, so it says that they begged Jesus to leave. Now, what would be the reason for the people to beg Jesus to leave at this time? He had just performed a wonderful miracle. He had healed a man who had been in absolute misery for years, and now they wanted Jesus to leave. Yes, Michael.
It's kind of the same situation that we have today, that the 2,000 pigs are of more value than one soul that was rescued from the clutches of the demons.
Okay, 2,000 pigs were sacrificed for one soul. Grant?
I was going to say they were probably concerned about the price of pork. But I think, along with what Mike said, I think anything that happens out of the ordinary, that especially the unsaved people can't explain, is going to be disruptive. And it probably is quite disruptive to the lifestyle of the locals there, and probably even fearful of realizing maybe who Jesus really was.
Okay. Any other comments or questions on this? Okay, one of the things that was going to happen was that the normal daily life of these individuals here was going to be disrupted. And so they were now concerned about what was going to happen. And remember, these were Gentiles that this was happening to. This was not Jews that this was happening to. And so we don't want anyone to disturb us from our routine. We don't want anyone to take our possessions. And so they lost their possessions, their pigs, and so they were concerned about this. And then we see, as he was getting into the boat, the man who had been possessed with demons begged him that he might be with him. Why would this man want to be with Jesus? I think there are several possible reasons. Yes, John. Okay, he wanted to be with Jesus for protection. He wasn't sure what was going to happen. He wasn't sure whether there were some demons that would be able to come back and inhabit his body again. So this is one of the things that he was concerned with, was protection. Any other reasons why he would want to be with him? Okay, we'll take Michael and then we'll get you, Laurie.
The text seems to indicate that the man did have some time with Jesus because the herdsmen spread the news in the city and in the country about what had happened, and then you have a certain amount of time before a crowd forms to go out and investigate what really happened. So I think that the man had some time with Jesus, and I think that, there already was kind of a bonding where he wanted to stay with Jesus, but obviously Jesus had a different purpose for his life and directed him a different direction.
Okay, all right. Okay, all right. So I think that both of these reasons could be reasons why he wanted to be with Jesus. He had built up a bit of a friendship, and he wanted to learn more about Jesus, learn more about Christianity, and also the fact that he was still kind of looking over his shoulder for the possibility that some of these demons might be still wanting to inhabit his body. And so Jesus says here that to go home to your friends and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you. How is this different from the other healings that we have studied so far? Yes, Flora.
It seems at times Jesus almost wanted to keep them secret, the previous
okay? At times he wanted to keep them secret. Here he is now telling this man to go and tell everyone. So what would be the difference? Why would he treat these two situations differently? Yes, Ryan.
So it may be the difference between Jews and Gentiles. You know, for the Gentiles, it was okay. They weren't going to, kind of, I guess, make this timeline go faster, right? If word spread among the Jews, you know, the timeline might be disrupted where they would start going along with, you know, trying to plot to crucify him and wherever earlier than intended. But with the Gentiles, maybe not so much that way. They just wanted the word spread there.
Okay. Jesus had a certain timeline as to when he was going to be going to Jerusalem and when he was going to be crucified. And the Jews actually tried to speed this up. When he was in Nazareth, they tried to catch him and to throw him off of a cliff. And so they tried to kill him several times. And the Sadducees and the Pharisees especially, they led this insurrection, whereas the Gentiles had no such agenda. And so they were not going to be trying to kill Jesus. And so this was a way for his message to be spread through the Gentiles, where the Jews, it wasn't a problem with spreading the message. It was just a problem of trying to keep the message proper and to keep the message so that they would focus on Jesus, not on the fact that they wanted Jesus to become the ruler and to overthrow Rome. See, the Jews were interested in having Jesus as their king because they wanted to get rid of Rome. The Gentiles didn't care. They were Romans anyway, and this was not a problem for them. So Jesus wanted this man to be able to speak to them. Any other comments or questions? Yes.
Is this the only time that Jesus asked the spirits as to what their name was? And was it for our sake or was it for some other reason?
No, he did not. He knew the name of some of the other demons. And it seems that when he knew the name of the demons, that he could now pinpoint this demon to come out. And so there could have been demons in other people that were in the crowd. And if he just said, demons come out, they could have all come out. And so he pinpointed the demons. So there were times when he did pinpoint and name the demons. Any other comments or questions? Yes.
You may have no way of knowing this, but do you think the demons were destroyed when the pigs went into the sea then? Like they went into the pigs and Jesus tricked them. But they went in the sea and then
Yeah.
around. Do you think the demons were destroyed?
They wanted to, the demons wanted to get into the pigs because they didn't want to just be out in the atmosphere, thinking that now they would be cast into the abyss. I think that when the pigs died, the demons died also, and that they just delayed their going to the abyss by a few minutes. But that's strictly a personal opinion. If you can find anything else on it that would negate that, that's fine. I have no problem with that. Yes, John. Okay, John asked the question, are there people that are demon-possessed today? We talked about this just a little bit when we introduced Mark, and started talking about this. If you talk to missionaries that have been in certain countries, especially Haiti and some of the jungle areas of Africa, these missionaries will tell you that yes, there is demon possession of individuals there. Are there demon possession individuals that are demon possessed in the United States? I think it's very possible. It's just that we're suave enough and civilized enough so that we can cover this a bit. Michael has something to add.
Yeah, from a biblical standpoint, everybody is in the clutches of the devil till they come to Christ. The demon-possessed person is showing outward manifestations of what's going on spiritually. You know, and obviously in this case, the demons knew right away who Jesus was, so they have superior knowledge spiritually than what's going on than some people do. But from a biblical standpoint, people are either the Lord's or they're the devil's, and the devil can do what he wants with them, what God allows him to do. So maybe there's not a manifestation, but if people do not belong to Jesus, they are in the clutches of the devil and they need Christ.
Okay, I don't think that a Christian can be demon-possessed. We are in and around demons, so on. They can cause difficulty, but I don't think that a Christian can be demon-possessed because Christ now controls us. But for the unsaved individual, I think that it is possible, and I think that there are individuals that are demon-possessed, and the only way that they can get rid of this is by accepting Jesus Christ as their Savior. And greater is He that is in you than he that is outside. And so Jesus is stronger than Satan, and that's always a comfort to know that. Yes, question, Randy.
Was the demon-possessed man a Jew or a Gentile?
Was a demon-possessed man a Jew or a Gentile? It doesn't tell us this. I have always assumed that he probably was a Jew, and that as a Jew he was just working for the Gentiles, herding their pigs for him. But I have very thin ice to stand on when I make that statement. Do you have an idea on this?
No, I don't, other than he seemed to recognize God. Now, was it the demon that recognized Jesus or the man that recognized Jesus? He must have had some knowledge of him, I'm assuming.
Right. I think that it was, the demon definitely recognized Jesus. And whether the man recognized Jesus or not, Jesus had not been on this shore of the Sea of Galilee that we know of ministering. He had been up here in the Bethsaida area and so on in that area, but I don't think he had been in this area, so it's possible that the individual had not met Jesus and so probably wouldn't have known him. Yes, Grant.
I think we want to be careful too that we don't think in terms of demon-possessed people, this is how they're going to act. Because I think the wiles of Satan are such, there's all kinds of manifestations, I think, of demon possession. And we, as you referenced, some countries, there's more of that kind of thing that seems to be more volatile. But, when the rapture takes place and the Christian emphasis and belief is gone from this world, and when you think what happened that time, the demonic activity, obviously, it's not only progressive, but it's more manifested. I have no doubt that there's demon possession of people all throughout the world, including the United States.
Yes.
How it manifests itself might be different at this time.
Yeah, the demon-possessed individuals in the United States probably are not running around naked in graveyards. So they are, by their demeanor, by the way that they treat other people, possibly even some of the murderers that we've had, the serial killers, some of these individuals could be demon-possessed. We don't know. They said Satan can take on various forms and functions and is very clever and is clever enough to try and use some ruse to be able to accomplish his purposes. Okay, any other comments or questions? We'll get into the story of Jairus' daughter and the woman with the issue of blood, and continuing on into chapter 6 next Sunday. So let's bow for a word of prayer as we close. Dear Heavenly Father, as we come to you, we thank you once again for being with us. We thank you for the beautiful day that you've given to us. We pray, Lord, that you would be with Pastor Tim as he brings forth your word, that this would be